it's Michelle, your CSEC Biology tutor. In this past paper solutions video, I will be looking at the CSEC Biology January 2017 paper 1. So we'll be covering all the questions 1 to 60. Okay, number 1, which of the following features is used to classify a group of organisms as class Insecta? So that would be the number of segments, D. Number 2, commensalism is illustrated by the relationship between A. So that would have to be the cow and the egret, where one benefits and the other is not suffering. So the cow is the one that would not suffer or would not benefit, while the egret would be able to get its food from when the cow moves around in the grass and stirs up like the little insects in the grass. So that would make the insects available for the egret to use. So the egret is the one benefiting, the cow is not and is not being harmed. Question 3. Living organisms such as plants are affected by abiotic factors which determine where they become established. Which of the following describes some of these determining factors? So abiotic factors meaning the non-living factors in the ecosystem. So that would be sunlight availability, soil pH, and minerals. So B. Question 4. Bacteria play an important role in the cycling of nitrogen. Which of the following organisms is not a part of this cycle? So out of these types of bacteria that are listed here, it would have to be the Streptococcus, Nitrobacter, and Nitrosomonas. Those are two types of nitrifying bacteria. So they'll be part of the process of nitrification. And Rhizobium is the bacteria that will be involved in nitrogen fixation. So Rhizobium is an example of nitrogen fixing bacteria. So Streptococcus is not involved in the nitrogen cycle. Item 5 refers to the following diagram. Energy flow through ecosystems is not 100% efficient. This is so because energy is. So the answer for that would be C. The energy is lost through respiration and excretion. So you have less energy being available at higher trophic levels. So the organisms at the beginning of the food chain in the ecosystems, which are the producers, they would have the most energy because they are directly getting the energy from the sun. So the producers, they would have the most amount of energy, while the higher level consumers would have the least amount due to that energy loss in the ecosystem. Items 6 to 7 refer to the following food chain, which shows the feeding relationships in a freshwater habitat. So we have the microscopic algae, the mosquito larva, the small fish, and the large fish. So it says here in question 6, the organism to which the least amount of energy is available is the, so it would have to be the large fish. So we just looked at the question about how energy is lost at each trophic level. So the large fish is a higher consumer, so it's the highest trophic level, so it's going to receive the least amount of energy. Question 7. The greatest number of individuals in the food chain would be the, so now the opposite now, usually the first trophic level, which would consist of the producers, would tend to have the greatest number of individuals, so that would be the microscopic algae. Question 8. Which of the following effects of climate change pose the greatest threat to small islands? So out of those options there, it would definitely have to be the rising sea levels, which can affect the coastlines. Okay, item 9 refers to the following graph of population growth. Phase 4 of the graph of population growth is most likely due to, so looking at the graph, you can see there's an increased number of organisms, and then it starts to level off around 3, and then at stage 4, phase 4, you're seeing a decline in the number of organisms. So that would have to be because of the competition from invasive species. So out of those options they are provided, it would have to be the competition from invasive species. Question 10. Which of the following statements about recycling manufactured materials are true? So we have less energy is used in the manufacturing of new products by using the raw materials from recycled products. Yes. 2. All manufactured products can be recycled. Yes. 3. Recycling of some non-biodegradable materials prevents landfill sites from filling up too quickly and for a long time. Right, so all 3 of those are actually true. So 1, 2, and 3, so that would be D. Question 11. Which of the following are effects of pollutants on coral reefs in the Caribbean? So the increase in macroalgal and seagrass growth. Yes, that is true. Less reef fish. 3. More branching corals. So not so much, because that would mean that there's a better growth of the corals. So the answer for that would have to be 1 and 2 only. So that would be A. Alright, question 12. Which of the following organelles in a cell is a site of aerobic respiration? So that would be the mitochondria. The nucleus is the site where you have the genetic material, cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance, and the chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. Question 13. Which of the following is caused by a lack of vitamin A in the diet? So that would cause night blindness, so the inability to see properly in the dark. Question 14. The role of respiration is so respiration is the release of energy from the breakdown of food. So A is the correct answer for that. Question 15. The chemical equation for photosynthesis shown below is incomplete. So we have X plus 6H2O gives you C6H12O6 plus Y. So which of the following combinations would accurately complete the equation? So X would have to be carbon dioxide, which is the 6CO2, and Y would have to be the oxygen, which is 6O2. So A is the correct answer. So it's important to make sure that the equation is balanced, hence why you have the 6 in front of the carbon dioxide, the water, and the oxygen. Item 16 refers to the following diagrams of different structures taken from plants and animals. So question 16, which of the above structures is not a tissue? So let's examine these structures carefully. So 1 looks like it's pointing at a set of epithelial cells, and you can see some cilia along the membrane of the cell. 2 is pointing at a motor neuron. So that is a cell, a single cell. So the epithelial cells form the epithelial tissue. 2 is just a cell, a motor neuron. 3 is looking at a group of cells from the dicotyledonous leaf. And 4 is looking at some muscle cells, which will form muscle tissue. So remember, tissue is a group of cells that work together to perform a particular function. So out of those, the only structure that is not a tissue would be 2, which is the motor neuron. So B will be the correct answer. Items 17 to 18 refer to the following diagram. So we have a little investigation set up here with some water, cucumber, and concentrated salt solution. So question 17, the process being investigated is, so that would be osmosis. We're looking at how water molecules move from an area of high water concentration to an area where there is less water molecules across a semi-permeable membrane in which the cucumber, so the walls of the cucumber are acting as that semi-permeable membrane. Question 18, which diagram best illustrates the levels of the liquids if the apparatus is left undisturbed for 1 hour? So at the beginning you can see that we have the level of concentrated salt solution inside of the cucumber and then the level of water. So water would generally move from the container across the cucumber and into the concentrated salt solution. So over a period of time you would expect to have less water in the container and a greater volume of the concentrated salt solution. So therefore the correct answer would have to be A. So you can see the volumes have changed. So the water has decreased in the container and the concentrated solution has increased. Question 19, which of the following is not necessary for photosynthesis to take place? So you should know the raw materials of photosynthesis are water, carbon dioxide, sunlight energy, you need chlorophyll. So out of those options there, it would have to be oxygen. Oxygen is not needed, is actually a product of photosynthesis. Question 20, a greenhouse plant which is usually kept at a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius is subjected to a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius for 24 hours. The most likely effect of this change is that the plant would, so we're seeing an increase in the temperature. So the plant is actually going to close the stomata and reduce water loss, because that increase in temperature can increase the rate of transpiration. So more water will start to leave the plant. So they don't want that to happen. So they will close the stomata to reduce that water loss and conserve the water within the plant. Items 21 to 22 refer to the following diagram of a section through an incisor tooth. So we have the different layers labeled. So it says the region of the tooth sensitive to temperature is labeled. So if you look at the diagram, the part labeled 3 is pointing at the pulp cavity, which consists of the nerves and the blood vessels. So nerves would provide sensitivity for the tooth, so therefore that is the area that will be sensitive to temperature. So 3, so that is C. Question 22, the region labeled 4 is the, so going back to the diagram, so 4 is pointing at that area in between the gum and the tooth. So that is going to hold the tooth into place. So it would have to be the cement. So the cement or the cementum to hold the tooth into position. And the other parts, of course, we have 1 being the enamel, 2 being the dentine. So those are the layers of the tooth. Alright, question 23. The diet of a bodybuilder should contain large amounts of, so the answer for that should be protein. Protein is necessary to build the muscle up. So bodybuilders, that is what they're trying to do, get bigger muscles to 24. Which of the following is the best definition for excretion? So excretion is the removal of metabolic waste. So you have to include that word metabolic. So it's the removal of waste produced from metabolic reactions. In other words, products of chemical reactions going on within the cells of the body. So that is excretion. If it was egestion, then it would be the loss of indigestible materials. So undigested food that just passes through the digestive system without any changes occurring to it. So C is the answer for excretion. 25. Which of the following enzymes works best in acid pH? So the answer for that is pepsin. So that is the protein enzyme, and we know that protein digestion begins in the stomach. All the other enzymes, they would work best under neutral to alkaline conditions. So we know lipase breaks down, speeds up the breakdown of lipids to fatty acids and glycerol. Trypsin is another protein enzyme, but it likes the neutral to alkaline pH. And then amylase is the enzyme that converts starch into maltose. So pepsin is the correct answer, A. Question 26. Carbon monoxide in cigarettes most likely causes. So carbon monoxide is a very toxic gas. So when it gets into the blood, it is going to reduce the oxygen carrying capacity. So what happens is that the hemoglobin molecule in the red blood cell tends to attract the carbon monoxide more than the oxygen. So the carbon monoxide ends up substituting the oxygen. So it's going to decrease the amount of oxygen, that is transported by the blood. So the correct answer is C. Question 27. In the transport of solutes in the phloem, the source is defined as any area of the plant where, so the source is the area of the plant where you have the food molecules pretty much being produced. And that is where you're going to have the sucrose being loaded into the phloem. So that is B. So there's an error I noticed here. They have it twice, B and D. So remember, sucrose is the soluble sugars that are transported. So when the leaves of the plant produce glucose in photosynthesis, that glucose is converted to sucrose, and then the sucrose is loaded into the phloem to be transported to various other parts of the plants, which will be known as sinks. So sinks could include the roots, also the stem, fruits, so all those areas where the sucrose would be offloaded. So those are known as the sinks. So B is the correct answer for the area that would be a source. Question 28. Which of the following parts of the human skeleton contributes the least to its protective function? So out of these bones listed here, it would have to be the humerus. All the other bones protect organs. So the rib cage, the ribs of the rib cage will protect the lungs and the heart. The cranium, that protects your brain. And the pelvic girdle protects organs like your bladder and your reproductive organs. So the humerus is the least protective of the bones there. Item 29 refers to the following diagram of a synovial joint. So question 29, which of the labeled parts represents the ligament? So a ligament is that tissue, that band of tissue that connects a bone to another bone at the joint. So 4 is pointing at the ligament. So therefore the answer would be D. So if we were to answer the other parts, 1 will be pointing at the bone, 2 is actually pointing at the cartilage, and 3 is pointing at the synovial fluid. So that is the area between the two bones to help lubricate the joint. Question 30. Which of the following are involved in the formation of blood clots? So A, platelets. So those are necessary for blood clotting. Question 31. Large organisms cannot depend solely on diffusion for the uptake and transport of gases. This is because as organisms get larger, the surface area to volume ratio actually decreases. So that is why they need a special transport system. So they're so large that their surface area to volume ratio would be very small. So B is the correct answer. Item 32 refers to the following actions. So we have withdrawal of an earthworm into its burrow when touched, bending of shoots towards light, rolling up of a millipede when touched with a needle, and movement of maggots away from the light. So all of these actions are examples of responses. So the organisms are responding to stimuli. So stimulus is any change in the environment. So the two stimuli there are light and touch. So they have to be responses. That is the correct answer. Item 33 refers to the following events that occur when a student reacts to touching a hot object by withdrawing her hand. So we have this flow chart here showing you the hot object, pain, effector, response. So the receptor will have to be the sensory endings in the skin. So receptors, they receive the information, they receive the stimulus from the environment. So when the student's hand touches the hot object, the heat, which is the stimulus, that will be received by the receptor, which are the sensory endings in the skin. Question 34. Fats are good food reserves because fats have a high energy value. So they store a lot of energy. So B. Item 35 refers to the following diagram of a heart. In a patient with a certain defective heart condition, it is found that blood flowed from point 1 to point 2 in the diagram above. So we're having the flow from 1 going into 2. So this was most likely due to malfunction of so the part that would have to be malfunctioning in the heart is the bicuspid valve. The bicuspid valve usually would close to prevent the backflow of blood into the left atrium. So we don't want the blood flowing from the ventricle, the left ventricle, back into the left atrium. Blood is supposed to be only going in one direction. So that is the problem there, the bicuspid valve between the left atrium and the left ventricle. Question 36. Which of the following comparisons between arteries and veins is not correct? So the first one is actually the incorrect comparison. A, there are no valves present in arteries. So the valves are only present in the vein. So that set of comparisons is incorrect. All the others are right. So we have blood flowing in pulses for the arteries while they flow smoothly in the veins. Arteries have thick muscular walls, veins have thin walls, and the arteries would have blood low in carbon dioxide. So remember, they'll be rich. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood, while the veins usually would have blood high in carbon dioxide because they're going to be lacking oxygen. So that is with some exceptions, because the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood to the heart, so that would be carrying oxygen, and the pulmonary artery, that is going to be high in carbon dioxide because that is going to be lacking oxygen and going back to the lungs to pick up oxygen. So that is the correct answer there. So A, the valves present and valves absent, so that is incorrect. Question 37, glaucoma is a result of, so the answer would be too much fluid in the front of the lens. So you have too much fluid and that leads to an increase in the pressure, and that pressure could damage the optic nerve at the back of the eye. So that is what causes glaucoma. Question 38, which of the following is true about how the muscles of the iris respond to dim light? So generally in dim light you would expect the pupil to get bigger, and remember the iris controls the opening of the pupil. So what happens is that the muscles of the iris are going to contract and relax. So the circular muscle of the iris is actually going to relax while the radial muscle would contract. So that causes the pupil to dilate, to get bigger. So the correct answer is C. So when one muscle is relaxing, the other one is contracting. Question 39, which of the following is a spinal reflex? So by spinal reflex, that means that the electrical impulses are going to the spinal cord and not the brain. So the answer for that one would be the knee-jerk reflex. All the others are examples of cranial reflexes. So the messages will be going to the brain instead. And question 40, which of the following is not a distinguishing feature of the nervous system? So we have rapid response, localized reaction, long-lasting effect, and temporary response. So out of those four options, long-lasting effect would be the correct answer. The nervous system, usually you have the rapid responses and the effects is usually immediate and short-lasting, so it doesn't last very long. So item 41 is based on the following graph, which shows the height of some students in a class. So we have a curve here in this graph, number of students versus height. So which labeled portion of the graph represents the unusually short students? So that would have to be A. So this is the area. So we're looking at a graph that is pretty much showing you continuous variation in height, and the extremes are A and D, and then the intermediate heights would be in the middle. So A is the shortest heights and D would have the tallest heights. So A is the correct answer for 41. Number 42. The following statements describe the processes taking place within a seed during germination. So first of all, we have embryo uses food to develop radicle and the plumule. So that's the young root and the young shoot. Number 2, enzymes break down proteins into amino acids. And 3, soluble products move into the embryo. So which of the following correctly identifies the sequence of events during the germination of the seed? So the correct answer would have to be, first of all, you have the 2, which is the enzymes breaking down proteins into amino acids, and then 3, soluble products move into the embryo, and then the final stage would be the embryo using the food to develop radicle and plumule. So that is 2, 3, and 1. So that would be D. Question 43. One advantage that sexual reproduction has over asexual reproduction is that sexual reproduction leads to variation. So you have differences forming. So sexual reproduction always produces variation, diversity. So B is the correct answer. Question 44. Pollen grains which are small, light, odorless, and smooth are most likely transferred by. So that would definitely have to be the wind. So that would be wind pollination. So because they're so lightweight and small, they can easily be picked up by the wind, and they're odorless, so they're not going to need to attract insects or birds. So C, wind. Question 45, which of the following is not necessary for germination to take place? So the seed does not need light to germinate. Only a seedling, as it's growing and developing leaves. That's the only time light will be necessary, when it actually has the leaves above the ground and the leaves can be used for photosynthesis. But the seed itself does not need light. It needs oxygen, it needs moisture, and it needs the food supply, which would be available in the cotyledons of the seed structure. So A, light, not necessary for germination. Question 46. Pollination is the process by which pollen is transferred from the A anther to the stigma. So that is what pollination is. The pollen grains are moving from the anther, the male part of the flower, to the stigma, the female part of the flower. Items 47 to 48 refer to the following diagram of the uterus of a pregnant woman. So which label structure is the amnion? So the amnion is actually C. So the amnion provides a protective feature for the fetus, protect it from shock and a fall. So it helps to also secrete amniotic fluid to keep the fetus buoyant within the womb of the mother. So C is the amnion. So you can see that it's surrounding the fetus. So it has that protective feature, and then the placenta will be A. So the placenta, remember, is the life support for the fetus. So that is where you're going to have an exchange of materials. So oxygen and nutrients are going to be entering the baby through the umbilical cord, which is actually B. And then D is pointing at the uterus. So the placenta, which is the baby's life support, that is A. Alright, 49. Which of the following organisms transmits the yellow fever virus? So one of the most popular mosquitoes, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, would be the correct answer. That is the vector for lots of various diseases: dengue, chikungunya, Zika. So D, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Question 50. Which of the following methods can be used in the treatment of hypertension? So hypertension, high blood pressure. So we have diet, exercise, low sodium intake, and that would be related to diet. So all three of those would be correct. So you need to monitor those things when you're hypertensive. So 1, 2, and 3, that would be D. Question 51. Which of the following statements about meiosis is not true? So the answer for that one would be C. Chromosome number is maintained. In meiosis, you have the chromosome number being halved. So you go from a diploid cell with a full set of chromosomes to a haploid cell with half the chromosome number. So all the other statements are true except for C. Question 52. The gene for coat color in cattle shows incomplete dominance. A purebred cow with red coat mates with a purebred bull with white coat. All of the offspring have roan coat. So roan is the mixture of the white and the red. So which of the following would represent the genotype of the offspring? So I have the Punnett square here to represent this genetic cross. So R represents the red coat, W represents the white coat. So when you mate those two animals, you get all of them having the roan coat, which is RW. So the correct answer is B. Question 53. Which of the following processes may be used by humans to change the characteristics of a particular organism in a short time? So we have genetic engineering, artificial selection, and natural selection. So out of those three options, it could only be the genetic engineering, which is one only. So A. Artificial selection and natural selection would take a bit longer. Artificial a bit longer, and natural selection would take the longest of the three processes. So genetic engineering would be the correct one. Question 54. 4 children born to the same parents have blood groups A, B, AB, and O. Which of the following represents the genotypes of the parents? So I did the genetic cross for you. So we have to, in order for the children to have each of those blood groups, the parents would have to be AO and BO. So you see how we produce those 4 different genotypes and the 4 different phenotypes. So AB is blood type AB, BO is blood type B, AO blood type A, and then OO blood type O. So the correct answer is B. Question 55. Variation in populations is due to. So we have 3 options here: mutation, asexual reproduction, and crossing over. So out of those, mutation and crossing over would produce variation in populations. So that is 1 and 3. So that is B. Asexual reproduction for sure would only produce identical offspring. Question 56. In a particular plant, red and white flower color show codominance. If 2 heterozygous pink flowers are crossed, the expected phenotypic ratio of the offspring is. So this is actually similar to the one with the coat color in cattle. So I'm going to show you the genetic cross. So if you're crossing the pink flowers, so they're heterozygous, so they would have R and a W. So they'll represent 2 pink flowers. The expected genotypes would be RR, 2 RWs, and 1 WW. So therefore you have the ratio 1 red, 2 pink, and 1 white. So therefore the correct answer for that one would be D. Question 57. Which of the following features of cell division refers to mitosis? So out of these options here, mitosis maintains the same chromosome information. So the amount of genetic material in the cells will remain the same. So you have the chromosome number the same, therefore that means that D is the correct option there. So all the others are related to meiosis. Question 58. Which of the following statements best describes a chromosome? So chromosome, that is the thread-like structures you find in the nucleus of a cell, and it consists of DNA wrapped around histones. So histones are just protein structures. So B is the correct answer. Question 59. A species is best defined as a group of organisms that. So the answer for that one would be D. Can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So that's there's a slight difference between C and D, but they have to be able to produce fertile offspring, not so much many offspring. So you see, make sure you notice that difference there. So D, can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. And the final question, 60. Natural selection differs from artificial selection because in natural selection, the environment determines the beneficial characteristics. So that would be B. On the other hand, if it was artificial selection, it is the humans that determine the individual with the beneficial traits. So humans are involved in artificial selection. Natural selection is influenced primarily by the environment because it allows the organisms to adapt to the changing environment so that they can pass on the favorable characteristics to the offspring. So it's all about survival of the fittest. So that completes the January 2017 paper 1.